Hi everyone, welcome to the November 10th session for the Plant Community Meetup here. So we'll go ahead and get started as people are slowly signing in to the session. Just a few quick notes here on GoToWebinar platform. So we'll keep the lines muted to reduce background noise. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand through the selection there in the options box. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to type those in. We'll keep an eye out for those as we go through the session. And then we do have some time at the end today. We're trying to do more Q&A this time around, so we can have an open discussion there with live speaking. And then this session will be recorded. We will put this out on the YouTube playlist that we maintain. So look for that after the session's finished today. We'll upload that and make it available to everyone. So just very briefly, introduction about myself. My name is Jason Drew. I'm a designated support specialist here with Autodesk, and I provide technical support to our enterprise customers and the communities on the following products listed here. Previous to joining Autodesk, I was in IT support for about 10 years and got into some P&ID design while I was working at an oil and gas company for about 3 years, working smart plant P&ID, and then eventually moved over to the Autodesk plant design products and been here with Autodesk for about 8 years now. And I'll go ahead and introduce our co-presenter today, Joel Harris, and let him run through his intro as well.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel. Hope everybody's November is going well. I'm a designated support specialist up here of Jason's. I came to Autodesk almost 7 years ago from 23 years as a piping designer in the oil and gas business. I support the products that are listed there. And before I was in engineering, I was actually an AutoCAD developer, started back in the mid 80s, and I'll be manning the Q&A panel. So we do have the questions that you can ask, and I do encourage you to ask a lot of questions during the session because we have light content since everybody's preparing for AU, which begins next week. That's Autodesk University. So thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, so the agenda, we're going to do kind of an overview, quick overview of what these sessions are about, and then, like I said, this theme for this month is Autodesk University and the plant classes that are going to be available there next week, and then we've got time here for like open discussion and Q&A. So what we do is we run these once a month. We have this at this time for sort of a global session to catch everybody. We did have these running for 3 geos. We've pared it down just the one to line up and align with our other communities that we have with the other products. These sessions are intended to be just casual engagements where we're going to share information and news, and then general discussion, workflows, things like that we'll provide each month. And then at the end, we'll have Q&A where everybody can ask questions, and we can open up the mics for anybody to speak about what they'd like to talk about there. We'll put up a safe harbor statement here. I won't read through all this, but they're just saying that in these sessions, we may be talking about future development efforts or plans for new products and services. So these are not promises or guarantees for things that'll come out, because plans always change with products and things of that nature. So just keep that in mind. If we talk about futures and things of that nature, just keep that in mind, that don't make purchasing decisions based on those. Always check with your account team first, verify that those are out. Release with the product first. So going into plant and P&ID classes for AU 2020, just to kind of remind everybody, you can the registration for AU 2020 for Autodesk is open now. If you go to the AU website at au.autodesk.com, you can go ahead and register. You should be able to register all the way up until the event begins. There's no charge this year. There's no fee. Just go ahead and sign up. You can go in there and look at the class listings that are available to sessions. Some of those are going to be delivered live. Some of those are going to be on demand where you can just watch those at any time. But the actual session begins November 17th with America's time zone. Then it kind of goes around the globe with those sessions being live, kicking off at certain times. So if you're in Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, European time zones, then it'll start November 18th and go through from there. So basically going into some of the classes, we went through and took a look at what's in the sessions there. These are the ones that are the live sessions. Now these are the ones you need to watch for. If we go over to the site here, just quickly, I'll just kind of show this here. So if you go into the AU site, go into the AU 2020 conference link up here, and then it'll give you a chance to register here, and then you can click on sessions. And right now there's currently no way to go through here and like hit the sign up button for these that are live. But if you search here for like say plant, you can see the ones that are available for on demand, and then the ones that are listed with an actual time slot. There will be a time when you go in and assume sign up for these. So this hasn't updated yet, but keep checking back for that, where you can get signed up for those, where you have to actually have a registration and get in. And I believe that's how that's working this year, Joel. I haven't the
Yeah, it
updates.
is. And actually, there's some additional information there that I learned is that you definitely want to register for classes because they'll send you links to the class pages. And so the instructors will be monitoring their class pages. So if you have questions about the content, typically at AU after or before the session, you'll go up and you'll talk to the instructor and ask them questions about specific things that maybe they mentioned. And that's really kind of what is going to be happening here too, is that each class will have its own page that you can go to where there'll be, you can ask questions and chat with the instructors and such. And I think that goes for the entire day of each class. So you get a chance to actually interact with the instructors more than you typically would with the hectic schedule that's typically at AU. So just want to make sure you do remember to register for the classes that are there. That way you'll get access to the additional content around that class. Thanks,
Okay.
Jason.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and these are listed in the universal time zones here, so you have to kind of convert these over to see when they start, because some of these instructors are in different geos and things of that nature, so make sure you check that. This just kind of goes through the calendar here at the top and then down through the list here at the bottom. These are the ones that are actually listed as the live sessions here. So some good topics coming up, especially around like Bin through 60, and configuring isometrics for somebody that's new to plant. This will be really good to join, get an idea of how to go through and set up your isometric settings and drawings, things of that nature. And then the live panel is going to be what we usually have at AU is a live panel, like a roundtable type discussion, where they'll have some experts there where you can talk about Plant 3D. They'll provide some topics to go through initially. That's always a good session to join as well.
Yeah, I'll be the moderator in that session. So you might want to go online if you're in a time zone that's different than UTC or you don't know your UTC time. But that one, the panel discussion, I think is at 6:30 a.m. Central Time, US.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'll be a moderator on that. So I'll be taking the questions and feeding them to our panelists.
Okay, excellent. So besides the live sessions, the ones that are on demand, there's just a couple here that I found that were specific to Plant 3D. There's of course more out there that touch on Plant or where it feeds into, AutoCAD type topics in general that could also be applicable to Plant. But these are the main ones that I saw that are on demand. Some interesting topics here around, like computational design, working with some PCF files, and I believe they're using Dynamo with that too. Digital transformation from one of our customers, Floor here, talking about how they went through, going and using Plant, Revit, other products together. This one here is a multi-discipline workflow with Plant Civil and 3D, Plant 3D, Civil 3D, and Revit actually, with BIM 360. And then another customer here talking about their multiple disciplinary engineering workflows. So just wanted to point those out. And so yeah, just make sure you go and check those out, get registered for AU and go through those. So what we want to do is kind of go through and do a live Q&A here. What's top of mind with the plant community? What topics are you facing right now? Anything that you want to bring up around Plant 3D, we can open up to the Q&A chat box here. And then also if you want to raise your hand and ask a question live, we can do that as well. And then what we've done is we're starting to plan for the 2020 year sessions with the community meetup. We're going to have a poll when the session closes out today to ask you, what are your ideas for what we should cover coming up in the next year. We'll take those and put those together, try to focus on the topics that everyone wants to see moving forward. So I'll just kind of take a look at the chat here, see if there's any questions so far.
We have one right now from Stephen. Actually, another one just came in, but Stephen Cummins asked a really good question about AU. How will the hands-on sessions work? And I'm not involved in any hands-on sessions, Stephen, so I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm not aware of any hands-on plant sessions, so I don't even know. Jason, do you know if they're going to be doing any lab type stuff?
I haven't seen anything like that. There might be some sessions where you can follow along and maybe you'll have to have the product installed and just kind of working with the presenter there as you go. But I don't think
Yeah,
there's any like virtual lab type things where you can actually, remote control a machine unless somebody has set something like that up. I'm not 100% sure.
right. Okay, well, thanks. Yeah, I don't know either. That's maybe a question. If you go to the AU site, you can actually ask questions of the AU team there. They might be able to answer your question, Stephen, a little bit better than we just attempted to. Um, so that's that. We have a question here from Michael Toll, and he's got a really good question. It's actually the top voted item on the idea station, the plant idea station. It's about Plant 3D being able to produce IFC files. And I know
Mm,
that there's been a lot of talk about that internally here. I don't know the current status of that, but I do know that conversations are currently ongoing around that. So hopefully they'll have a solution that will satisfy that. Because yeah, you're right. You have to purchase a third-party tool to be able to generate IFC from Plant 3D as it
yeah, there
stands right now.
was,
So
I don't know if I don't, it was on the forums or somewhere. There was a really like long way around workflow is either through AutoCAD architecture, I think has an export option, or maybe it was AutoCAD MEP that would export out to IFC files, but you had to basically export from plant to regular drawing files and import in there and then go out. So
it
that
was
was one thing you
MEP,
could do. MEP, okay.
according
Yeah,
to
and then like
Michael.
you said, um, I think iConstruct has an option where you basically load
Yep.
your plant models in Navisworks and then that has a smart IFC exporter that will grab the properties and attach those in there. But yeah, I think it's like you said, it's all third party at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds like they have to be pretty small plant files, according to Michael too. And I know that interoperability, which is really something that we all want to see more of, is kind of a big theme here at Autodesk. I know that with the development teams, that's really been something they're really working on. It also facilitates our platform with BIM 360 being able to have the interoperability um, on that platform. So you'll probably see quite a bit of improvements in that area. Um,
Okay.
I have a question here from Viet Nguyen, and I'm just wondering, this question about Plant 3D orthographics, and we might want to
Okay.
unmute
Okay.
Viet.
All right. Let me do that.
Hi,
Okay.
thanks for
Hello.
taking my question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a project that I've been working on, and the direction of the project is we want to automate the shop drawings as much as we can. So that means the way we used to do it, or the way we're currently doing, is extracting in our stuff and then putting in like the architectural background or whatever, and then like scaling off the BOP elevations from the finished floor in the Navis. One of the biggest bugaboos that we have here is you want to use the orthographic tool because it's super cool, right? There's a lot of data that's embedded in it. We want to leverage that as much as possible. On top of that, it's automated, so it reduces the amount of human error, right? But the thing is, we're given a Navis file where the finished floor elevations are different than the UCS that we're given in the DWG. So to import into Navis, we have to like rotate it and translate it up and down or whatever. And the biggest constraint that we have from using the orthographic tool is that we can't customize like the BOPs. We can't like set a reference point from Navis or get it from Revit or whatever, and then put it into CAD. And then when they say BOP from level 2, it will say 10 feet. Because right now it'll say like, 62 feet and 10 inches and 3/4. And I can't get that to automate to, a set point that I want to dictate. So that's the question I have. If there's a workflow for that, or if that's something that's going to be coming down the pipeline.
Well, I'll take a shot at this. You're working with Navisworks files, so that's the only file format that you can, because I'm not really too aware of how those would show up in an orthographic. I mean,
Well, it's not. We're not using the Navisworks file to put into our shops. We're given like a Revit model that
okay,
we can take a slice and then export that as an architectural background or whatever, and then we extract that into our shop drawings, and then we could
right,
see, okay, here are the walls, here's a floor, da 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 da, and then we will say, okay, well, this piece pipe is so and so feet from the grid line and X feet above the finished floor of the, above the finished floor.
Right.
So we don't know how to get that to the next level and get an actual BOP from the finished floor. If there's like a data link or something, I'm not sure.
I don't know of anything like that. I mean, I've seen people do some creative things with nested XREFs where they can have an XREF that's at 0, 0 so that you're not having trouble with bringing those into your orthographic drawings. And then within that XREF, you've got your located through some sort of API or Lisp routine located view. It has been moved up and down to be at the right location for the eventual use in the orthographic, but it's basically nested within another drawing that's at 0, 0. So.
Yeah, and there's in some cases there's been the requirement to have like decimal feet and inches for the ortho annotations. So I've had to create like a custom application with the software development kit so that it'll put that into the properties palette, and then from there you can read that as an annotation and place that into the orthos. That was something that a customer did before, and I assume if you did that, you could probably have it calculate by a certain amount and then use that value. But that was something that they had to do that was not out of the box. It did require some programming.
Thanks, Fiat, for the question. We don't have any more questions right now in the Q&A panel, so if you do have a question, feel free to put it in there.
Yeah, let's see if there's any more. One more question here.
Somebody had their hand up for a second there. Okay, we have a question here from Steve Lozano. Any plans for improving the UI for Plant 3D or for the workflow on inserting the piping components? So I do know that we are working on the UI for parts of Plant 3D. I don't know if it's going to affect the routing that much, Steve. Haven't had a lot of feedback actually from customers saying that there was really any difficulty with the workflows on that. So I haven't really seen any like strong user feedback that says, oh yeah, we really want this to be better. There's been some questions around sloped piping, and how that interface works and stuff. And we've done some work on that, but I don't really know of any. Jason, do you know of any changes to the UI for routing or inserting piping?
Not really. I think most of the newer versions have been the same as far as either placing from the tool palette. You can always route from like this. You can bring up the spec viewer and route from there. And then of course there's the ones that come up with the right click menus as well, where you can select parts. But I haven't seen any changes really to that as far as if they're looking to change anything from a development standpoint.
Yeah, he says it's basically compared to other software out there that he's used, it takes more steps to insert components with Plant 3D. So
I mean, I've seen oh, sorry, go ahead.
As I say, I mean, basically you're dragging from a tool palette onto the pipe if you're placing a component onto piping. If you're putting it in space, then of course you need to know where it's going to go. I usually have a routing line or something like that. But yeah, it's trying to utilize just regular AutoCAD sort of drafting procedures with the ability to, when you insert it into a pipe, tab between the different offsets, whether you're offsetting from a corner, a certain distance. You can also change your base point with the command line options there, or the right-click options, where instead of measuring from the end of an elbow, you can go from the corner or vice versa. So there's a lot of options there for it, but it may not be the default options that you're looking for. So we're getting a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to sort of leave that one right there because I don't really think there's a whole lot that we can offer as support people around that. Stephen Convins does have his hand up, Jason, so if you wanted to raise that.
Okay. All right. I'll let Stephen unmute. I don't know if I can unmute him or not. It may not be the click in there, but it's not unmuting. So if you're
self-muted.
Okay.
So Stephen, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yep.
Okay. This is maybe a suggestion for one of the next sessions, maybe in 2021. Um, um, I mean, we work with a lot of different plant design applications, and there is a certain level of isometric extraction quality. So in the figure that is in my head, and I could be completely wrong, it depends as well from project to project, is that the isometric extraction quality is sort of 70%. So there's a 30% of rework sometimes required. Now, one of the next sessions, possible suggestion is that some methods are disclosed or reviewed that would reduce that isometric rework. I know some of my guys, they have some routines and some ways of working to reduce that from 70% to 85%. But there's certainly some known issues that could be discovered or discussed in one of the sessions, saying, okay, this is a known issue, this is a workaround for that, or this is something that comes a lot. I mean, because the joint generation is an important part of the design work, of the work, and if that success rate is increasing 70 to 85 to 90, that makes a lot of people happy on projects. I mean, it would certainly make me extremely happy. And I know there's some workarounds around, so
Yeah.
is that something?
That's interesting. I've never heard numbers that low with the customers that I work with around the amount of quality or the amount of rework being that high. I have customers that don't touch their isometrics at all, and they're fairly traditional oil and gas isometric type groups. They don't really accept a lot of sloppiness. Are you talking about like annotations or crossing leaders or stuff like that you're seeing, or is there missing data in the title block, or what sort of cleanup are you having to do?
Okay, that's a good question because okay, in petrochem oil and gas, I've worked in petrochem oil and gas and power. Currently, I'm working in pharmaceutical biotech, and there you have a lot of four-way valves, a lot of very odd components that you don't typically find in oil and gas or power. So, and with four-way valves and five-way valves and all those configurations, there you tend to have a lot of challenges.
Oh yeah, I imagine the multiport valves they're getting a little bit messy. Yeah. Okay, well we could definitely put that on the agenda for dealing with specialty things like that, where you have multiport valves and how to get them as clean as possible. So I've noted that down here, Jason. Thank you, Stephen. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Appreciate that. So we have one here. Somebody asked about how they can keep, well, I'm going to reword it a little bit, but Imran Khan had asked, is there a way to keep drawings from getting out of the project or, getting disconnected, I assume, from the project is the question. And I'm assuming that you're working with a SQL project, which is a multi-user project, not a SQLite project. So I'll address that first, is that if you have a SQLite project and you're sharing it with multiple users, that's not a good workflow. It's actually strongly recommended against that because it's a file-based database, and so you're going to get disconnects and lost information quite a bit if you have multiple users working in the same SQLite project database. Now, if you're working in a SQL database, there's no real reason that drawings should get disconnected from the project unless there is some sort of renaming of files or moving of files that's going on. You say making backups, you mentioned that, and I'm kind of wondering if that's something that's happening, is that things are being moved around or whatever. But it's not a common complaint that we hear where people are losing on a SQLite or SQL project drawings from getting connected there. You know, with BIM 360 team, there's possibility, probably the highest probability there of disconnects, just because it is a cloud-based, open, secured or open permissions platform. And so sometimes we'll see a lot of people doing things to files in mass up there that cause them to be disconnected to database. But I don't know, Jason, do you have any ideas about that?
I've talked to some customers that have people on laptops and they're on wireless connection. They don't really realize it, but when they shut the lid on the laptop, it disconnects. And so when they open it back up and bring it out of sleep mode, they keep working in Plant, but yet it's disconnected from SQL. So Plant should pop up a warning message to say, hey, it's, you know, I've lost connection to SQL. And at that point, you want to close out of Plant and then launch it again. But any kind of disconnects like that can throw it off. Typically what happens with that is you'll lose data where you have objects that have lost the Plant 3D properties. You just see like the generic AutoCAD properties and the general properties, you know, something's happened, you have to go back and erase those objects and recreate them. But in general, you know, a SQL disconnect, if any user sees something like that, then you probably want to, like I said, back out before you save anything, and then check with your IT group and say, hey, I'm having trouble connecting to the SQL server, something going on across the network, or you know, low bandwidth or I'm sorry, a high latency connection there where there's a problem that can cause issues. And I think with the cloud stuff, it's been pretty reliable, because I've tried to break it myself where I've disconnected and it usually gives a warning message before you try to check in, and it tries to commit that stuff. It'll roll back and then try again.
Well, Imran has confirmed that it's SQLite that they're doing, and that's probably the problem right there. That's really, you get a Plant 3D database, which is your piping DCF, and you got your P&ID database, and each of those is a file. There's 5 files, 5 database files, and a SQL project, SQL database. It's a transactional database. It's record-based, so you're updating individual records, so multiple people can be in that project working on files and not lose data. But with a SQLite project, the first one in locks the database, and the next person in can get access to the files, but they may not be saving back the data or creating drawings. They think they're creating them, but it's not storing it in the drawing registry in the project, in the piping database. So we definitely discourage people from using SQLite for a multi-user environment. If it's just a one user in a SQLite environment and you're still having disconnects, all I can think of there is that maybe a permissions or network issue if you're on the network.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I can't really see why that would be.
Yeah, I think we did some checking into like the actual SQLite, you know, the main website for that, and it also discourages like using it across the network if possible, especially multi-user. It's just not built for that type of transaction. So
yeah, and actually we have a good input here from Alex Schmidt on the Revit workflow question that was posed earlier by Viet. He mentioned that make sure you get your Revit coordinates changed to the same as the UCS that you're using for your plant project. That way, when you're generating your exports from Revit and your views, that they should line up when you bring them into either Plant 3D or Navisworks. And he's right, the shared coordinates is something that you want to make sure that you have, you know, aligned with your CAD or AutoCAD coordinate system, so that your UCS there. So.
all right.
Okay, we have a question here from Michela. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If not, I apologize. That basically they are a Plant 3D admin in Biofarm, and they said that the Multiport valves can have one actuator, and they're wondering when is Plant 3D going to have the ability to create a multi-port block valve with multiple actuators. And I haven't really seen a whole lot on that myself, Jason.
Yeah, I mean when they came out with the initially the pharmaceutical multiport valves for biofarm type content, yeah, they were just a single actuator, and I honestly not familiar with the multiple actuators or what that would look like, or if you could build something out with a custom block or, you know, with a custom actuator on a valve body like that. Probably best to reach out to like the plant content team for that, or we can check with them as well as a follow-up and see if they're aware of that, and maybe they can gather some examples and see about building that out. But as far as I know, I haven't seen anything that's coming out support that anytime soon.
Yeah, I was just going to see if I could get that Plant 3D content email here. See if it's on one of these pages. I'm going to the Autodesk Exchange App Store, and it's plant.content@autodesk.com. So I'll put that in the chat there.
Yeah, that's a monitored alias there that they'll reply back to you and get some information about what you're looking to do with those type of valves.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, Steve, I noted your comment about the isometric cleanup. I said it really probably depends on the industry. I do see no-touch ISOs out there coming from customers. I also see customers that do have to do a lot of stuff to the ISOs afterwards, but I didn't really think it was more than maybe 10 to 15% that I've typically seen. So I don't know how much is involved with that. I know that I've worked a lot with customers, and actually we have consultants out there that work with customers that will help a lot with the ISO config tweaking, customization there to kind of get your annotations cleaned up, because sometimes it's really as simple as, you know, modifying a text style or you know, some of your offsets and your leader styles and in your dimensions and leaders that all of a sudden allow the algorithms which are used to generate the isometric annotations work a lot smoother. Sometimes it's very small tweaks that need to be done, and so that's why Stephen, your comment about the rework tips definitely is a good future content, whether it's MPV or not. Sometimes you just end up with very dense drawings, and the annotations are really where you need to start focusing on as far as your cleanup, and then also looking at you know, your containers around text and just the kind of information that you need to have on the face of the ISO, just optimizing that as much as possible. So, but it's noted, definitely.
Yeah, I think we could definitely get some like known issues that we've experienced either from support cases and things of that nature. Like you know, I've ran into some cases where you have pipelines that are you know, hundreds of feet long, and it just has trouble running all that out, and you have to kind of split it up a bit, put some breakpoints in there. There are workarounds for things like that. It's just knowing what to do to make sure that what's going into the ISO engine will produce more of a clean output in the drawings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's some simulated annealing, which is a programming term for the technique that they're using for optimizing the layout on the isometric sheet. And there's some settings in the ISO config for that aren't available through the user interface when you're doing the setup for isometric styles. I've played with them quite a bit. A couple of them actually make some differences that were notable. Some of them don't really seem to do much at all. So it's one of those things. You kind of have to experiment to kind of see if you're, you know, of course, experimenting with a non-production project. But and I'm sure a lot of you have done that too. But I jumped right in the ISO config as right out of the gate, and that's where I found the most benefit, was getting familiar with that and using a good XML editor so that I could see the XML structure within that ISO config XML as well as other XMLs. It really is helpful to understand that. Then I got an idea of how annotations are being used and what filters they're calling and where the filters are stored in the XML and all that. So we have another question here, Jason. I'm going to give this one to you. Is there anything to suggest that a larger title block drawing, say A1 size, can give better ISOs than a smaller one, say an A3? And for those of you in Imperial, that'd be like compared to a C size to an A size or a B size.
yeah. A lot of times a larger sheet size, for whatever reason, can help. I think it just gives more area for the isometric engine to generate all of the objects into, all the blocks. And so a lot of our customers do go from like on the Imperial size, they'll go from a C to a D size sheet and then space out all of the you know, the no draw areas and the tables and everything like that. And it does seem to work a little bit better for whatever reason. I think because it's trying to scale things down to a smaller area on the smaller sheets, and it just has more trouble. It ends up with more congestion, they call it. And when you give it more space, it does tend to make it come out a little bit more cleanly. So definitely worth a try if you're using the smaller size sheets. Try a larger one and then adjust your title block and test it.
Yeah, and I've even seen people do really what would be to a drafter an inconsequential change, like changing a 3/32 text height to 0.1, which is really close to the same. But all of a sudden the engine has, because the text height's fixed, right? So it's got to work with those blocks of text and try to fit them around in there. And just sometimes just taking off, a couple hundredths on some of your fixed size items, whether they're, the bubbles around your bill of materials callouts or the text heights, all of a sudden gives you a lot more cleaner layout. So, right, we have a question here from Edelmiro Rodriguez. And can you integrate Plant 3D with Civil 3D? And I think that we had an AU class that was kind of going to talk about some of the workflows there that was in a previous slide. So that would probably be a good one for you to sign up for there. And you can ask those questions directly. And this may be also for the previous question about Revit that you had, Viet, is that first class there, the on-demand class. If you sign up for that, you can ask questions directly of the instructor and get some of these instructors are Autodesk people, but some of them are actually end users. And like Alex contributed earlier, there are a lot of workflows that people have come up with that are very useful. So I'd recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, it is possible to export like a civil surface and bring it into Plant, and then you can kind of snap to the surface lines as you're routing underground pipe and things of that nature. So definitely possible to do that. I haven't really seen anybody bring a native Civil 3D drawing in, even though you can load the object enablers. Usually, it's getting an export of I guess you call it a tin surface, out of Civil and bring that into Plant. That way, you have something to work with as far as the grade level and things like that. But it's certainly possible to do it that way. Yeah. And then we'll also allow you to run orthos with it too.
Yeah, definitely. That's the key thing is you want to get your deliverables out. So I mean, there's also the collaboration aspect of it too. Is that with BIM 360 design and model coordination, you can bring together your Civil 3D models that are stored in BIM 360 as well as your plant models that are stored in BIM 360, and do your collaboration coordination there. And with the new issues plugin, which allows you to take a desktop version of Navisworks and open up models that are in the coordination space. You can actually open it up on Navisworks desktop and have the Civil 3D models and the Plant 3D models that are in BIM 360 all come down, and you can manage issues, assign issues and stuff in Navisworks. So there's some workflows. So integration is kind of a really broad term. A lot of us think of integration as compatible file import exports, or the data comes across, or the geometry and data comes across, and then some people look at it more of a platform where you have data and geometry all sort of normalized within a certain platform so that you can work with different programs, even if they're not from that same vendor, maybe in a platform. And that's really, I think, where the BIM 360 teams here at Autodesk are trying to put a lot of effort, is to make that platform so that you can quote unquote integrate different tools together there, either through Forge development or just the native functionality of workflows that allow you to check your civil drawings, check your plant drawings, have your checkers identify issues, you solve them, and those updates are going to a common coordination folder where people can work and see the final model. So, Jason, did I cover too much there, or do you have anything to add?
Oh no, I was just thinking the other thing that often or sometimes people aren't aware of is that do you like search on Autodesk Knowledge Network for Navisworks coordination models? Well, if you have, let's say, the Civil 3D drawings and layouts in Navisworks, you can take those, save it out to an NWD file and attach that into Plant without having to actually load it in. You're just putting sort of like an overlay in there where you can see the Civil 3D surfaces and the models, but they're not actually part of your project, so they're not kind of bogging it down. And then you can still route pipe around that. It won't work with the orthographic drawings. It won't show up when you go to do an ortho, but just for model coordination, a lot of customers use that as kind of a lightweight method to bring either Revit or Civil or any other type of model that you have already loaded in Navisworks and see it in Plant.
Yeah, that's
just
great. Yeah,
throw that out there.
Yeah, because that's great because you're working in a modeling environment. You don't need necessarily have to have the CAD geometry there at the initial start when you're doing your layout and such. So, it makes sense. And that NWD file doesn't require any object enablers, so you can open it up in any AutoCAD, any modern version of AutoCAD, and overlay that NWD, even though you had Navisworks object enablers for that to generate the NWD, you don't need it after that point. So, well, we have a general question, Jason, about plant development team working on any plant 3D isometrics improvements. For example, controlling congestion on the sheet and such.
Yeah, I would say best bet there is to go to the beta site and join up there for the Plant 3D beta, because you can go into the forums and post questions to the development team and ask them if they're aware of certain things, or if you have an example of something going on, you kind of check with them there, and then also you can provide feedback and see what's being worked on as far as improvements. Anything new that they're working on will be posted in there. You can actually try out like sort of beta builds through like a virtual machine and get a sneak peek of what they're working on. So that might be a good method to get some feedback there on the isometrics. And if you have anything that you believe is an issue, you can also log in a support ticket and we can put it in as feedback to the product team to take a look at and investigate. But as far as like new features for isometrics, I haven't seen anything coming up that isn't already in the beta that could be mentioned here. But that's your best bet to get some of the connections there to the product team.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. Well, we're just a few minutes from the end of the session, I believe. Isn't it a 45-minute session that we do here?
Yeah, and I'll just see if I can get to the pop the feedback site in there just for everyone to have it. It was beta.autodesk.com, but you can go here and get signed up. Anybody can join there. It'll give you sort of a profile to fill out. You can pick the products that you use and the ones that you want to join. Plant 3D will be one of those. It's actually under the AutoCAD section now, but Plant falls under there, and that's where you can find the information you're looking for.
Yeah, and just in general, there are controls for how much congestion you want to try to fit on one sheet already. But if you're looking for improvements in that area, I'd specifically ask in that feedback forum there. Great, we got a couple minutes left. If there's any other questions, feel free. Michela, I did put your hand down because it was up from before you asked your question in the chat or in the Q&A, so hopefully that wasn't a problem. If you still have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or in the questions, the Q&A session.
All right, don't see any more in the chat window. Don't see any hands raised, so we'll go ahead and close out. So what we're going to do when I close out of this session, there'll be a webinar survey that pops up. You'll be able to put some feedback in there on what you'd like to see on the sessions coming up for 2021, and anything else you'd like to see. There'll be another question there for that. So appreciate everybody joining today. Look forward to seeing you next month and into the future here. So yeah, excited about AU next week. So be sure to sign up for that and join up with us next week.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.